Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Classics Grizzlor figure. The second member of the Evil Horde has finally arrived in the Classics lineup. Hordak's ranks are growing, but how does Grizzlor measure up? Let's jump right in and take a look. Grizzlor comes in the standard Classics blister card. His real fur is, honestly, a bit messy inside that box. He almost looks like he's kind of unkempt in there. The back of the box features a look at other figures that have been available in the line. And as always, it also features a brand new bio for Grizzlor. Now out of the box, when you actually have a chance to mess with his hair a bit, you can get it looking a little less crumpled up and a little more fluffed out. But we're going to get to that fur a little more in just a moment. First, let's take a look at the details on the figure. Grizzlor's sculpted face sitting within the fur is very reminiscent of the vintage action figure. And I just love those really cool looking deep red eyes. Now, most of the figure does seem to be a reuse of parts from the Beastman body, as you can see by his arms here. He also features that same removable Horde armband that came with Hordak. And he's got brand new hands with only 4 fingers. He's got boots featuring the Horde logo at top, with the feet that are reused from the Keldor figure. Alright guys, closer look at Grizzlor here. Now, obviously Grizzlor is a little different than all of the other figures we've seen, simply because his entire body is covered in a real fur. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at exactly how this fur works. Now, first of all, it is worth noting that this fur is slightly going to hinder his articulation. On top of that, the armor that he's wearing hinders it even more, so we'll start there. While wearing his armor, he does not really utilize the ab crunch very well. I mean, the Bat Horde logo is pretty much resting right up against the chest and the abdomen area where that crunch is, so that is going to get in the way. Now, Grizzlor's armor is removable right from the back. It's very similar to other armors we've seen, where you can just pop it off the 2 pegs, and then you can just slide the armor right off the figure. Now, I will go ahead and state this now, as I figured this out earlier. When you try to put this back on, it is a little complicated. The reason being that this hair is so thick and gets so bunched up that it takes a little bit of fighting to stretch this down and actually get those pegs hooked. So you may not want to be taking the armor off too often if you want to have to fight with putting it back on. Alright. So the figure without the armor. Now, the way the actual fur is on this figure is it almost seems to work kind of like a bodysuit or a sock that's just kind of almost stitched onto the figure. Not actually stitched to the figure, but it's resting on it and then kind of sewn together around. Now, the parts you can really see that this is what's done is right down here about the leg area. It's actually got some excess that hangs down between the legs. Yeah, I know. But there's some excess fur that's hanging down between the legs, and you can feel that it's actually sewn together right here in the middle. And as you can see, you can actually move it around. It's very loose, and you can see the actual normal loincloth underneath, which is the same color as his fur on his legs, yet he's got a yellow belt on underneath, so that's something that's a little interesting. Aside from that, he seems to be attached pretty solidly. Like the fur to the actual bodysuit is pretty well attached, but you can see that it's pretty loose on the arms. You can see almost, if you wanted to, you could definitely cut this off. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but if you want to, it looks like it could be removable. Now, it is also worth noting that Grizzlor's head is removable. Not something I was really expecting with this, but it pops off just as with all the other Masters figures, and the hair on his head is attached to the head itself. So it's not all one piece. Now this might be a little hard to see on camera, but something else that I want to show you is on the actual head. If you look underneath, you can see that there's actually a yellow headpiece underneath. Almost as if this face part is just attached to this yellow piece of plastic underneath. That's because, as we saw originally, Grizzlor was going to have interchangeable faces instead of an interchangeable head like a lot of the other figures. Of course, this idea was scrapped, so now the face is permanently attached to this head. But you can see where that was the original idea just by looking under there. Now, the last thing I really want to talk about is the durability of the fur itself. While it does seem to be pretty firmly attached, like I can't grab it and just pull chunks of it off, it's worth noting that it sheds. It definitely sheds. If you're going to be moving the figure around a lot, if you're going to be pulling the head off, you're going to have clumps of hair like this falling off. Just by moving his articulation around, I have already lost several bits of little hair, and it is kind of a little disappointing, but it's also not something I wasn't quite... I mean, I was kind of expecting this. I mean, I'm not real sure how easy it is to completely attach that hair and keep it there where it doesn't fall off. But, word of warning, you might want to be careful with it. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to rub the rest of that hair off. As mentioned, Grizzlor is wearing the classic harness featuring the infamous Horde logo on the front. He also includes an extra loincloth piece inspired by the 2000X Staction release. The piece can be attached to the figure just like the armor, but again, that fur does get in the way a bit, and it's not the easiest thing to fasten. But this is a pretty cool addition, and is perfect for those fans who prefer Grizzlor's 2000X look. Grizzlor also comes with quite a few weapon accessories. Of course, he has his classic Horde crossbow. It's cast in a green color and features a brand new sculpt that differs from the crossbow that came with Hordak. But he also includes several new accessories that, just like the additional loincloth piece, are inspired by that 2000X Staction version of Grizzlor. There is a new long sword and short sword, and a small axe to round out Grizzlor's arsenal. This gives you plenty of display options, and including these along with the classic crossbow are perfect for pleasing both fans of the 2000X series and the Vintage series. What's even cooler is that the back of Grizzlor's harness works as a weapons rack similar to the Man-at-Arms figure. Both swords, the axe, and the crossbow all fit snugly on his back. This is something that I really like, as I love it when a figure actually has a place to store all of his accessories. It's much better than having to worry about losing the stuff that you're not going to display. Alright guys, it's comparison time. Here's Grizzlor alongside his vintage counterpart, where he obviously takes most of his inspiration from. Notice the similarities in both the face sculpts and the shape of his body due to that realistic fur. Next up is Grizzlor with the 2000X Staction figure. The loincloth and extra weapons are his closest similarities, as the face and even the way the fur is styled is much more of a vintage look. Now, Grizzlor is honestly a bit of a mixed bag for me. On one hand, I'm glad to see him with that real fur. It's what makes Grizzlor Grizzlor. Sort of like flocking on Panther. But on the other hand, I'm not so sure I'm entirely happy with how this fur actually looks. It seems to shed a little too easily just by moving the figure's joints, and it does make his proportions seem just a little off. But either way, I'm at least happy to see that the evil horde is finally upping their numbers. This line has been severely lacking horde figures. And at least we finally have a use for that axe.